Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Right, next, death threats, hate-filled messages, harassment and criminal damage. A small snapshot of the kind of abuse MPs have received in the 6 months after the murder of MP Jo Cox last June. A specialised police team set up to investigate crimes against MPs says it's looking at 50 complaints in the last 6 months. To give us an insight into the kind of abuse MPs get on a regular basis and the impact it has on them, we can speak to Lib Dem MP and Chief Whip Tom Brake, who is actually getting extra security fitted at his home this morning, and also the SNP MP, Dr Lisa Cameron, who herself has received death threats since being elected as an MP. Welcome, both of you. Let's start with you, Tom Brake. Tell us what's happening to your home without obviously jeopardising your own safety and the reasons why.
Well, first of all, what I'm doing, I'm taking advantage of a package that is provided to members of Parliament to provide a level of security. So this morning I've got someone coming in to upgrade the alarm because the one that I had wasn't deemed to be appropriate, and also to look at some of the fixed sort of security measures such as doors and locks and so on.
Why?
Well, because post the very tragic murder of Jo Cox, I think members of Parliament rightly are seen to be vulnerable. We're in the public eye, and many members of Parliament.
Right, but didn't you receive a specific email which...
known if they've been...
Sorry, go on, Mr Brake.
Yes, I've received emails, for instance, one that post the Brexit vote suggesting that I should consider carefully how I vote, in that I need to vote the right way in the interests of myself and my family. So I think most members of Parliament will receive emails of that nature. Now, I don't know whether the people who are sending these appreciate what the recipient feels. And another thing that's worth pointing out, of course, is that many members of Parliament, we will rely on our staff to check social media, so they will often be the ones who see the more abusive, aggressive tweets or Facebook posts.
And what impact does it have on you when you get a threatening message that says, you should watch out for your family, be very careful how you vote in the future?
Sorry, the sound cut in and out there. I didn't catch that.
I was just asking you, Mr Brake, what impact it does have on you when you get a threatening email which specifically refers to your family.
Well, clearly most members of Parliament, we spend most of our lives actually in Parliament where we are protected, properly protected. However, our families very often are in the constituency, and therefore anyone who is even alluding to the vulnerability of our families is someone who causes a lot of disquiet for members of Parliament, and when the threats are perhaps directed at constituency offices, they pose a real, they're very disconcerting for members of staff as well.
Dr Lisa Cameron, thank you for talking to us. Tell our audience about some of the horrific messages you have received.
Oh, I mean, it actually started the day after I was elected, to be honest. I went from being a doctor in the local community who was well respected and would never have received these types of threats online or via mail, to having received death threats where images of beheaded corpses were sent to me with threats towards myself and my children and family's lives. And also someone had put together a letter from newspaper word cuttings and sent it to me, also threatening to harm me and my family. So it's something that I think you can't treat too lightly. The security measures are certainly a step in the right direction, and I have to say that following from election, having come from the NHS and seeing the very good security and staff safety policies there, I was actually quite shocked that MPs at that stage had very little in terms of risk management procedures in place.
And this happened just because you were an MP, just because you became an MP?
I believe so. I think it is much to do with the way that MPs are seen in terms of public perception. And I can say that it did happen almost instantaneously from moving from one career to the next. And that was a defining change that I experienced. So yes, it was almost like I was fair game, and certainly that my children and family were then fair game too, which I think just isn't right.
No, it's not on. And in terms of security measures, have you looked at this for your family home as well as your constituency office?
Yes, the police have been out to the constituency office, and just last week they installed alarms at my home, and also some panic buttons. I have to say that I had moved to the countryside in a sense to have my family so that I wouldn't need these procedures, but I do think that we need to take appropriate risk management seriously now.
Does it make you think twice about whether you will seek re-election next time there's a general election?
I think you have to always take account of the impact upon your family. I've put myself in public life, and I didn't want to have a negative impact upon them. However, I grew up in the constituency that I represent, and it's a very real privilege to be able to represent them and to do my very best for them. So it's something that I'm hoping with the appropriate risk management measures in place that we can all feel much more secure.
OK. Thank you both very much. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Tom Brake, Lib Dem MP and Chief Whip, and also Dr Lisa Cameron, SNP MP.
Death threats, harassment, criminal damage. A small snapshot of the kind of abuse MPs have received in the 6 months since the murder of MP Jo Cox in June. A specialised police team set up to investigate crimes against MPs says it's looking at more than 50 complaints made in the last 6 months. Well, earlier I spoke to the Labour MP Rachel Maskell, who's received death threats and was sent an image of a severed head around the time her colleague was murdered. She explained to me the abuse she suffered online.
Clearly, you don't expect this in public life, and certainly people across all parties go about doing their duty, and therefore we would expect to have none of this abuse, online abuse, and also things being sent to our constituencies. And obviously, often the staff are the first people to open the email or the envelope, which contains something quite abhorrent. What really needs to take place, as the Home Affairs Select Committee has said, is real controls now around social media and the kind of abuse that is being put out. Because if we as MPs in public life are experiencing this, I worry most of all about young people and the kind of abuse that they also experience online. And we need really good, tight controls now around the whole of the social media network to ensure people are safeguarded against this.
It always seems like a very straightforward solution, doesn't it, to say we need tighter controls? But of course, it's a very, it's almost like wrestling with jelly to some extent with social media and so on. How do we realistically try and stop these kind of disgraceful and abhorrent messages getting through to people? How do we track down who's sending them, for instance?
Well, clearly the police have put in place a really tight operation to try and track down people who are posting abhorrent messages. I know they did that with some of the messages that I received, and we need to make sure that that framework is in place and the proper funding is there to support the police in their operations. But also we need to make sure that the companies who oversee these sites, these social media sites, do put the controls in place to take down those sites and to call people to book.
Since the death of Jo Cox, do you think there has been more discussion among MPs about these kind of messages that they get? Do you feel it's a topic that comes up amongst yourself and your colleagues?
Online abuse in particular has been something that we have discussed as MPs across party, and it is something that really does concern us. As I say, it's not just limited to MPs. We've seen some really abhorrent behaviour across public life, but it is something that we're very conscious of. The way that we conduct ourselves in our constituencies, ensuring our safety, is now part of everyday life, but also ensuring that we get on top of these issues, because we're concerned about the culture in our country, which is enabling people to feel they've got a right to make these kind of postings.
Do you think it's possible to say direction these kind of comments and hate messages are coming from when you talk with colleagues? Is there a sense that they're particularly coming from one group of people, or is it more general than that?
I think there is a tendency for many of these comments to come from organisations with quite abhorrent views on the far right of the political spectrum, and therefore it's really important that measures are put in place. Obviously, we embrace free speech in our country, but there has to be limitations, and this clearly moves into the area of hate crime when you start hearing the kind of messages that some of my colleagues have been facing.
Rachel Maskell talking to Rachel Little earlier.
There is no way round it. The footage is shocking, indeed downright nauseating. But it draws back the curtain on something that is happening right under our noses. The neo-Nazi group National Action was banned just before Christmas last year on the grounds it was a terrorist organisation. No surprise, perhaps, after it was championed by the killer of the MP, Joe Cox. But an ITV News investigation has discovered it is still operating in secret. There are still combat training camps. Members of the old organisation are still pushing racist and indeed anti-Semitic views and are still saying that Mrs Cox deserved to die. Words fail us. In a moment, we'll have a statement from her husband on our investigation, which was carried out at some considerable personal and physical risk to the undercover researcher. This exclusive report by our security editor, Rohit Khatru, does contain some unpleasant language, not to mention opinions.
National Action is not only a white supremacist group, it is Britain's first far-right terrorist group too. The organisation that celebrated the murder of MP Joe Cox, its slogan, "Death to traitors, freedom for Britain," uttered by her killer in court. NA is banned, it shouldn't exist, but our investigation reveals former members are still meeting in secret. In quaint surroundings, a village in the Peak District, a far-right training camp. After months of work posing as a sympathiser, our reporter was invited to join. They have no idea that ITV News is in the camp alongside them.
So, another one that can use very, very simple in a street situation, back situation.
There are 10 students in this class.
This is a few basic techniques from certain techniques.
Followers are being taught how to respond to a knife attack and how to fight back.
If you go that way, do that way.
Among the students taking part in boxing class are 2 men linked to NA. This man calls himself James Mack. He has been associated with the group for several years. Here he is at one of their rallies, but he's not the only suspected NA follower here. This is Garen Helm from Liverpool, a former convict, a racist, and today a trainee boxer too. He's the man behind the mask who was jailed after abusing Jewish MP Luciana Berger over Twitter. Away from class, our undercover reporter met some of the men.
All right, how you doing? I'm sorry.
Up close, the 23-year-old Nazi sympathiser.
All right, what's your name?
Garen.
Garen.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, mate.
Sitting out of view, Garen Helm with James Mack talk about Helm's conviction.
I had that argument with that Luciana Berger on Twitter, and I just started to say, just a Jew. All built in on the door, and not even bobbies as well, CID. So they'll pull you in and bang, no previous convictions, no history with the police, but you're going right to prison for the moment.
They carry on like somebody's died. Do you know, if like a family member died and somebody got off, they carry on like that, with just somebody who badmouthed them.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the way these Jews carry on.
Then the men discussed the murder of the MP Joe Cox.
It was after that camp we did last year that we really came down on us, and then Joe Cox got murdered, didn't she? So they just used that as an excuse to come after us. See, a lot of the lads are bitter over me. I mean, some of the areas we've grown up in, they're so rough and so infested, you know, ethnics that they've literally got no tolerance for people anymore. believed to be committing treason. I don't think if you're committing an act of treason against, you know, your own ethnic group, then by right you should be put to death. Are any of the NA lads coming? Or ex-NA?
They're well aware that NA meetings have been illegal since the group was banned.
So the whole thing is just, well, not even allowed to meet each other anymore, are you?
Well, it depends. I mean,
That's just a name, isn't it?
No, I've got pulled by special branch a few times over it, and he basically said, listen, if we see like 3 or 4 years meeting up, and we deem it to be an NA meeting rather than a friends meeting, and then we'll just come out with everything we've got, so we can't really risk it.
Later, there are lectures on a British apartheid.
Our plan is to take an active role in building an organised white community in this country.
Camps like this were a hallmark of NA.
I mean, I might be trying to support my white community by only going to white-owned shops and stuff like that.
Hi there. Garen.
He's not here at the moment.
Do you mean he's back?
We've tried to put our findings to Garen Helm. He hasn't responded to our requests. But his brother did give this response.
Oh, these mates before I go mad. Away. Away from the front door.
Okay, all right. Yeah, okay.
Away.
Far-right groups are gaining confidence across Britain. This was Alloa earlier this month. A demonstration by the Scottish Defence League. There were other groups there. Some proudly wear their names, wave their flags. Can you tell me why your fight is coming? There's one that can't. Is anyone in National Action in this group?
National Action? What are you talking about? Never heard of them. I heard of them.
The name has disappeared. The ideology endures. Britain's far right is evolving.
Move. We're told to market. Bye-bye. Speak to you. Move. Bye-bye. Move. Move.
And it's growing too.
Well, after seeing Rohit's report about National Action, Joe Cox's husband, Brendan, gave us his reaction. In a statement, he said, the rise of the far right is something we should all take more seriously. Their attempts to undermine our country's values of decency and inclusion will not succeed if we hold together against their hatred. Joe dedicated her life to bringing people together and building stronger communities. And he went on, her values reflected the best of what it means to be British, and the way the nation as a whole responded to her murder is evidence of that. And Rohit is here now. Well, that was intensely uncomfortable viewing. Well done for you and your team. Incredibly brave work. What do you... I mean, how big... I mean, it looks scary to witness. How big of a problem in the round do you think it really is?
Well, the threat from the far right is, of course, eclipsed by the threat from Islamist terrorism in this country. But let's not forget that the one death from terrorism in the UK last year was at the hands of the white supremacist Thomas Mayer. This is a pan-European problem. It is growing across the continent. Here in the UK, that white supremacist movement at its most extreme end is led by National Action. That's why it was banned and called a terrorist group last December. Now, Europol, the cross-continental policing agency, are particularly worried about all of this. They have identified training camps like this one as being a particular threat, particularly those with weapons training, as we saw there. They've also said that politicians are particularly under threat by this new wave of far-right extremists. And it so happens that today we learned that a special police unit here in the UK that was set up after the killing of Joe Cox to take complaints from MPs has so far received 53 complaints since last summer. Now, the activist group Hope Not Hate says that essentially National Action has not closed down, and they gave their response to our report earlier.
Our opinion is that National Actions, or those who are involved in National Action, still pose a threat. They haven't really, although they've disbanded, they haven't stopped their activities. They are still agitating, they're still involved in marches and demonstrations, and we believe that their activities, whether they use the name National Action or not, we believe that their activities could encourage others to engage in terrorist acts.
And Tom, I think what we see here has parallels with groups like Anjem Choudhury's Al-Muhajiroon, groups that are banned, groups that are classified as terrorist organisations, managing to skirt the law, managing to skirt their prescribed status.
OK, Rohit, thank you very much indeed.
I've been getting away with it